Hey, this is Edward, and I'm making this video as somewhat of a foray into the TLC, I suppose. An idea of doing this has been banging around in my head for a while, and so I decided that I would just do it so I could stop thinking about it. um, this is going to be very much inspired by Paul Vanderklay's style. So prepare yourself for that, I suppose. Um, I thought this section of Paul's video he did the other day about how would we know if we encountered a wise AI. This section was particularly interesting to me about the difference between uh, first age wisdom and second age wisdom. So I'm going to play the video here.
Which is that machine learning, AI, can provoke wisdom. And again, I pushed John on this many times in the conversation, that there's a hinge that happens from the pre-axial age to the axial age where the entire frame shifts. And the frame shifts into this two worlds mythology. Because Jesus' wisdom is unintelligible. It can't be seen without this shift that happens in the axial age to this two worlds mythology. And this is seen in the resurrection, because the resurrection is a vindication of the wisdom of Christ. But that vindication does not take the form of the pre-axial age religion. If it had, Jesus would be raised from the dead. Jesus would gather around him an army. Jesus would gather around him a people. Jesus would march to Rome and then march to China. And Jesus would take many wives. Jesus would have all sorts of wealth. Now remember, the Bible's going to speak on both levels here. And you can find symbolically, and in fact you can find this in the gold, the icons. You know, the church has used both of these systems to talk about wisdom, and says Jesus, give unto Caesar what is Caesar's, give unto God what is God's. Okay, sorry, Sam. The divinity of Christ, the Trinity. Jesus plays in both systems, but Jesus challenges the lower system with the upper system. And of course, the assertion is that Jesus then, that's the sense in which Jesus fulfills the old system. Because Jesus says to his disciples who look at the rich young ruler with the eyes of the pre-axial age religion, how can this be true? And Jesus says, anyone who leaves fields and families and anyone who leaves all of this in order to follow me will not only receive in this age wisdom, in this age the fruits, but in the age to come. Okay. Do monastics receive in this age? Now monastics will say, we've received higher things. We happily mortify ourselves, we happily deny ourselves in order to achieve these higher things. But Jesus makes it clear that, this is to sort of push against, let's say, a two worlds mythology. Jesus makes it clear that this is all one continuous thing. But Jesus is this bridge to the other level. Okay. AI enlightenment.
All right, so that the reason this part of the reason why this section stood out to me is because for one, Christ is very troublesome to me. Forgive me if that's like an offensive thing to say, but this is part of the reason why I'm making this video, is that I've been drawn into trying to join a church and become a Christian, and going there and participating, some of the things make me bristle, and just being vulnerable here. I don't know, something. Christ just kind of bothers me, okay? So this was interesting to me, and ponder. It was thought provoking, and it reminded me of this section in Jonathan Pageau's Robin Hood video, because it occurred to me that, and this is probably too obvious to mention, but that this wisdom that Paul is referring to has much to do with time and broad strokes of it. So this was, I thought, a wonderfully connected bit. So let's watch it.
I want to make sure I don't go too long. What time is it? 5 more minutes, right? Okay. And so I wanted to bring it back to the idea of the green man and this idea of this greenery. In the story of the greenery, there are all these interesting characters that appear, and one of the most interesting ones is actually from Islamic tradition. There's a character in the Quran. He's not named in the Quran, but he's known in Islamic tradition as the Green Man. His name is Al-Khidir. And in that story, you see this trickery playing out as well. In the story of Al-Khidir, what happens is Moses finds out that this character, who doesn't have a name in the Quran, is the wisest character. And he wants to receive teaching from this character. So he goes and finds him. And the character, Al-Khidir, says, yes, you can study with me, but never question my teaching. If you question my teaching, I'm gonna cast you out. So Moses agrees to do this, kind of starts to follow Al-Khidir. And then Al-Khidir does horrible things. Does things that are completely nonsensical. One of the things he does is he goes into a city, finds a boat from a poor fisherman, and he rips a board off the boat and walks away. And there are different versions of what it is. And he does these things that, look, one of them is actually he kills a young man, which that's pushing us, a little far. It's not, how can I say this? Like, it is a Muslim story. It doesn't have exactly the same morality as ours. But he does these kind of horrible things. And every time Moses is like, what are you doing? Why are you ripping a piece off this boat? Why are you doing this? And every time, Khidir says, you're not supposed to ask. You're not supposed to ask questions. And then at the end, finally Khidir reveals all the secrets. He says, the reason why I took the piece off that boat is because there's a king who's coming to claim all the boats that are functional in the land. And so by removing a piece of the boat, the king won't take it from this poor man. And so a gesture that looked like it was nefarious was secretly hiding a positive gesture. And what's interesting about the Al-Khidir story is that there's a version of that story that I don't know how it happened, but it seeps its way into Christianity, it seeps its way into our legends, and it becomes a Merlin legend. So there's a legend of Merlin in a romance called the Romance of Silence.
This is a great section that's worth listening to as well. But what I was really interested in was that Al-Qadir story with the boat, because time has to pass before it's clear to Moses that this person is wise, and Paul was talking about how this is not being broken into a two worlds mythology when he was talking about the ascetic monks, but that it's continuous. that seems to me that he's implying that. Well, he's not. He said it that Christ what justifies the first age wisdom of uh, children and riches and power and this sort of thing. Um, but that it's different, and it seems to me that an aspect of that difference is time. That you give up these things in the present for an even greater return in the future for someone who you'll be giving it up not so you can get it in the future, but so people of the future can reap the benefits. And this mysterious wisdom of Christ that Paul was bringing up really came to mind when I read a tweet the other day, a post on X. I'm not going to bring it up. I'm not going to read it because I wouldn't feel comfortable doing so, because it's extremely offensive to Christianity. But I'm sure you could find it if you looked for it. It's by an account called Cat Girl Kulak with a K. And to put it short, this tweet is about the problem of Christian passivity and pacifism. And again, this person is clearly very angry about it, about what he sees to be kind of cultural suicide being orchestrated by Christianity. And I can empathize with this deeply. I read a book by this gentleman. I always forget his first name, but his last name is Ibrahim. And he writes all about the historical conflict between Christianity and Islam. And I read his book, Sword and Scimitar. Had a very profound effect on me. And it definitely played a role in my feeling I had to try to become a Christian. And because this book talks all about like the wars, and paints Islam with a very bloody brush. And seeing the videos on the internet of Europe and all over the place, this makes me feel very defensive of some sort of ancestral lineage. And so that draws me to try to participate in that ancestral lineage. And at the same time, it's also frustrating, because and again, I'm not forgive me for if I'm being political and stuff like that. I do not have a full understanding of geopolitics and everything like that. I'm a fool. I'm just communicating my perspective, and hopefully that somebody can mirror it back to me in such a way that, I gain wisdom, that I become less of an idiot. So having said that, to put it, I already said what I said about Islam, so no need to retread that. The point is that there is a history of passivity on the Christian hand in this long history of the relationship between Christianity and Islam. This pattern we see today, or what appears to be seen by me today, as a Christian passivity in the face of an invasion, has happened before. Apparently, Martin Luther said that it was a good thing that armies of Muslims were slaughtering Christians by the thousands, so that they could be sent to God all the sooner. And that is very sickening to me. And so this is a troubling matter for me. I have the sense that this can be squared, but it will be difficult. I did have an idea, or an idea occurred to me yesterday. My mother showed me this country song about a guy singing about killing someone who was threatening his family. And this is a Christian man. It's very deeply so. It's embedded in this gentleman's music. But it was a song all about violence. But it occurred to me that the song was sorrowful. It was about, hey, you mess with my family, you're gonna die, right? It's very violent, but it's at the same time it's sorrowful. At least in its tune, and I wonder if that is, and hopefully somebody out there sees this and can shed light on this, but it seems to me that has much to do with Christ telling us to love our enemies. This is something that this person on Twitter brought up, the Catgirl Kulak, and about how evil of an idea it is to love your enemies. And it seems to me that this is misunderstood, because Christ, he doesn't say, and please somebody correct me if I'm wrong about this. He doesn't say explicitly, anyway. He doesn't say let your enemy do whatever they want. Give everything up to your enemy. He still uses the word enemy, right? He still, in saying love your enemy, he's saying you have enemies, right? Am I crazy? And so what loving your enemy might mean is, doing everything you can to not need to employ violence, and also to, bring them into a loving, fellowship. And then if you have to kill them, don't do it gladly. Right? Like, pray for their soul as they die. Forgive me, I know this is a very kind of dark discussion here. I just realized my camera's all messed up. I'm not going to worry about that. So that's what I have to say about that. There's a couple of other things I wanted to talk about, I think. Let me look at my bullet points here. So Paul Vanderklay and others in the TLC have recently been talking about the youth and technology and, being cyborgs. And I realized the other day that I am deeply a cyborg. I'm deeply a cyborg. I played my first video game when I was 5. It was the Mulan game on the PlayStation 1. So screens have been ever present in virtually my entire memory. And it's kind of strange to think about. I feel better when I'm not playing video games, like, period. As in, like, my whole week is better if I don't at all, is what I mean by that. When I'm going through a gaming binge, I feel dumber. I feel less alive. There are less connections happening in my brain. But YouTube is a little bit different for me. I mean, obviously, the whole shorts algorithm is a sick poison. So dopaminergic. But through this rambling, what I'm kind of coming to is that YouTube has been my church for most of my life. And I'm not sure what to think about that. It's very strange. Like, if it weren't for YouTube, I could be. It's strange to think about. Like, what could be. What do they say? Combinatorial explosiveness of hypotheticals. But yeah, I feel like I could be dead without Jordan Peterson. I could be dead. And without... I would not be going to church right now, despite how much on some level I don't want to. I wouldn't be going if it weren't for Jonathan Pageau and John Vervaeke. I wouldn't be going to church if it wasn't for John Vervaeke. So I guess part of what I'm saying, at least, is that you guys are doing a good thing. If anybody sees this, you'll know what I mean by you guys. Paul Vanderklay and all these folks. I've watched a live stream or two, and so I include all of those folks when I say you guys. If it weren't for John Vervaeke, I don't think I would be trying to abstain from video games. and he's just, like Paul said the other day, a light being through a screen. Part of the reason why this is a strange thing to think about is because I also am beginning to understand the importance of embodiment and the deep, deep value. That's one of the reasons why I've been trying to see if I can make a relationship between me and church work, because it's embodied. YouTube has been my church for a long time, and I worry that it's not enough, right? And obviously it's not enough, because it's not a place for me to go with my friends and family, right? Don't we need a place to go for fellowship? I've only really had a couple experiences that showed me that is the case, that being embodied in a place, talking with other people about deep matters, is very fruitful and beautiful and peace-inducing. And unfortunately, that was at a Protestant church that I don't plan on returning to. I want to talk about myself, just to get some of this stuff off my chest. Maybe somebody will see this and they can give me some advice. Ironically enough, I'm a big fan of Paul Vanderklay. I watch his videos all the time. I keep up with them as if they're, my favorite TV show or something. I work alone at work, so I can just listen. And so every morning I put on the latest PVK video, or 2 or 3. And so I bring that up because it's ironic that, he's Protestant and I'm such a big fan of his, and I unfortunately carry with me a lot of resentment for Protestantism, because that's how I grew up. I grew up in Protestantism, and my story is actually kind of the opposite of John Vervaeke's, right? If you're familiar, very, fundamentalist and very struck with fear all the time and stressing out about his eternal resting place, whether it be, damnation or heaven. My experience was the opposite. I believed when I was a young man, in, let's say early teens, that because I believed in Jesus, whatever that means, because I had the belief in my head that Jesus was God, I was going to get to heaven. I had a golden ticket, like from Willy Wonka, and I was in. Full stop. So because of that, my logical conclusion was that nothing I did on earth mattered. Nothing else. Nothing else mattered. So, why be a good friend? Why care about other people? Why do your homework? All I wanted to do was play video games all day, every day. That's it. because I thought that when I died, I was going to the most awesome place forever, no matter what I did, because I believed. And that's some sort of Gnosticism in bed with a nihilism. I I hate it. Like it was kind of a revelation to me as an adult that life mattered. And I'm very unhappy with that fact. I mean, I'm happy that, I did come to that, or I was granted that revelation. But, man, is it unfortunate that had been the case. In some poetic sense, I'm at peace with it. I very much enjoy Nietzsche's idea of amor fati, having love for your fate. That, it's a beautiful story in some sense, despite, the tragedies and everything else. But it makes me very displeased that this could be the case for other kids. And for other adults, for that matter. That you have all these Americans running around, cheating on their wives, getting drunk, and thinking, well, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because I believe in Jesus, so I'm going to heaven. Now, I know that that's not the majority. A lot of people just don't think about it at all. I'm sorry, that's a mean thing to say. But because of that, it makes it very difficult for me to come to terms with Christ in such a way that it doesn't make me itch when I'm in church and they say, and the whole congregation as one says, Christ is risen. And I don't really know what to do about that other than, just kind of gritting my teeth and continuing to go. I kind of feel like I'm courting the church as the last pretty woman in town. Again, I really don't mean to offend. I'm trying to be vulnerable so that if anybody has any insights into this, they can, give me a hand. And I have one more thing to say, and then I'll leave it at this. I talked about technology and church, and how part of the reason why I decided I would try to go is so that I can be part of a real church, an embodied church, rather than just attending YouTube videos. And so I started attending this Orthodoxy 101 class that's held on the church grounds. And last night was the first class. We had met once before to kind of set up, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is, what's expected of you guys, et cetera, et cetera. But last night was the first actual class where there was a lecture. And after the lecture, So I'm coming here to be embodied, and we're all sitting in these rows, and in front of us are these giant screens where they're projecting like slides to assist us in understanding the lecture, which is appreciated. Believe me, that's appreciated. But then, when the lecture was over, they swapped over to a Q&A section. And to assist in the Q&A, they brought onto the screens another priest who was coming in from, some other state or something, over Zoom call. And I wrote down here what my thought was about it. I said, I know this is very much a nitpick, but it still made me sigh, a deep sigh. I know, well, I don't know, but my theory is that technology is a beast that we have to tame. I don't think that we're just going to return to the woods, I'm sure some will, but like as humanity, I don't think that's going to happen. I think that we require a better relationship with it. Yeah, like I said, it just made me sigh. I was really hoping to, be embodied, to get away from the screens for once. And and then we're doing a Q&A with a guy over a Zoom call. But I'm going to keep going, at least for now. I don't know how it's going to go. I don't know if I'll keep going. But that's where I'm at. So all the ghosts watching, thanks. I appreciate it. I'm going to leave this video as a comment on PVK's most recent one, so because he said he reads all his comments, so maybe he'll watch this and can give me some advice. Thanks.